The bailiff's hands seemed impossibly large as he snapped the cold metal handcuffs around 12-year-old Emma's small wrists. The courtroom fell silent for just a moment, before the whispers started again. A 12-year-old girl, in handcuffs, because she insisted her mother was a Navy SEAL. Judge Blackwell smirked as he declared her delusional, ordering her immediate removal from the court. Nobody believed her. Nobody stood up for her until the heavy oak doors slammed open, and boot steps echoed through the chamber. Welcome to Hidden Heroes. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. The small coastal town of Harborview seemed frozen in time. A postcard-perfect community where fishing boats bobbed in the harbor and everyone claimed to know their neighbors. The wood-paneled courthouse at the center of town square had stood for over a century, witnessing generations of local justice. Today, it was packed beyond capacity. Townspeople pressed shoulder to shoulder on the hard wooden benches, their expressions ranging from pitying to curious to something darker. At the center of this attention stood 12-year-old Emma Rose Mitchell, small for her age, but with a presence that belied her stature. Her untamed curly hair framed a face with eyes too serious for a child. Despite her brave facade, her hands trembled slightly as she faced Judge Blackwell, a stern man in his 60s whose family name adorned half the buildings in town. 2 weeks earlier, Emma had been a normal kid with 2 parents in a home on the peninsula that jutted into Harborview Bay. Now her father, Dr. Marcus Mitchell, lay buried in the town cemetery, victim of what officials called a tragic boating accident. The circumstances had been vague, the investigation cursory. A marine biologist who spent his life on the water doesn't simply drown. Emma had insisted to anyone who would listen. Nobody listened. The court recognizes Octavia Reeves, representing Falcrest Development Corporation, Judge Blackwell announced, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a man accustomed to being the final word. Octavia Reeves rose from her seat, smoothing her impeccable suit. Her heels clicked purposefully as she approached the bench. Your Honor, in light of the tragic passing of Dr. Marcus Mitchell and the apparent abandonment by the minor child's mother, Falcrest Development is petitioning for emergency temporary custody of Emma Mitchell until permanent arrangements can be made. Next to Emma sat Lavinia Caldwell, a retired teacher in her 70s, who had been looking after the girl since the funeral. Lavinia raised a gnarled hand. Your Honor, if I may speak. The judge nodded curtly. I have been caring for Emma since her father's passing. I was their neighbor for 11 years. There is no need for this child to be placed in institutional care when she has a home with me. Reeves smiled sympathetically. While we appreciate Mrs. Caldwell's generosity, at her advanced age and with her limited means, she is hardly an appropriate guardian for a traumatized child. Furthermore, the Mitchell residence sits vacant on valuable property that requires proper management. Emma's eyes narrowed. This was about the land. Her father had explained its importance countless times. Judge Blackwell turned his attention to the girl. Emma, the court understands you've suffered a terrible loss. Is there any other family who might take you in? Your mother, perhaps? The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Everyone in Harborview knew the story, or thought they did. The wife who had left years ago, abandoning her husband and child for reasons no one quite remembered, but everyone claimed to understand. Emma stood straighter, lifting her chin in a gesture unconsciously mimicking someone the courtroom had never seen. My mom is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell. She's a Navy SEAL on deployment. She's coming back for me. The silence lasted only a second before the first snicker broke it, followed by another until ripples of disbelieving laughter spread through the room. Whispers flew from bench to bench. A female SEAL? Impossible. That poor delusional child. Marcus must have filled her head with stories. Judge Blackwell exchanged a knowing glance with Reeves before his expression settled into practiced concern. Emma, I understand this is difficult. Many children create fantasies to cope with abandonment. It's not a fantasy, Emma insisted, her voice rising. My mother calls when she can. She sends letters through secure channels. My dad kept records of everything. Your Honor, Reeves interjected smoothly, this only underscores our concern for the child's mental well-being. These delusions. They're not delusions. Emma's composure cracked slightly. Call the Pentagon. They won't confirm specifics about her missions, but they can verify she exists. Judge Blackwell sighed heavily. Ms. Reeves, do you have the documentation we discussed? Yes, Your Honor. Reeves produced a folder. We took the liberty of checking military records. There is no Sarah Mitchell listed as active duty in any branch of the United States military, let alone as a Navy SEAL, a unit which, I remind the court, has never included female operators in its history. Emma's fists clenched at her sides. That's not true. My mom was one of the first. It's just not public knowledge because of her assignments. The judge's patience visibly snapped. Young lady, this court has been extremely patient with your outbursts. This behavior only confirms our assessment. He nodded to the bailiff. Officer Gray, please escort Emma to the holding room while we complete the paperwork for her transfer to county care. Bailiff Talon Gray, a hulking man with hands like ham hocks, moved toward Emma. Come along now, little miss. No. Emma's refusal was quiet but firm. My mother is coming for me. Bailiff, restrain her if necessary. She's clearly a danger to herself in this state. Gray reached for Emma's arm. She tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. His massive hands encircled her wrists, and with practiced efficiency, he snapped a pair of cold metal handcuffs around them. The shocking image of handcuffs on a small girl's wrists silenced the room momentarily. Emma stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at the metal restraints. Then uncomfortable laughter resumed, mixed with whispers. Poor thing's completely lost it. Marcus should have gotten her help years ago. What do you expect when a mother abandons her child? Gray took Emma's arm, guiding her toward a side door. As they moved through the crowded courtroom, the spectators parted, some avoiding her eyes, others staring openly at the spectacle of a handcuffed child. At that moment, the main doors of the courtroom slammed open with such force that the sound cracked like a gunshot through the room. Conversations died instantly. Every head turned. 4 Navy SEALs in formal dress uniforms entered with precise, measured steps. Their faces were expressionless, their posture perfect. The insignia on their uniforms caught the light. Behind them stood Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell. 3 years earlier, the pre-dawn light had barely begun to filter through the curtains of the Mitchell family home. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway of her daughter's bedroom, memorizing the sight of 9-year-old Emma sleeping peacefully. Unaware that her mother would be gone when she woke, Sarah leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her daughter's forehead. I will be back as soon as I can, she whispered, though she knew Emma couldn't hear her. Marcus waited in the hallway, his face a careful mask hiding the worry he carried whenever she deployed. We will be waiting, he promised, reaching out to squeeze her hand. Their goodbye was that of a couple who had done this before, practiced and precise, each movement choreographed to minimize the pain of separation. His final words to her had been the same as always, come home to us. Now, 3 years later and thousands of miles away, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell had led her tactical team through an operation she couldn't discuss in a country she couldn't name. Her unit moved with the synchronized precision that came from years of training and shared combat. The extraction had been successful, the intel secured. No casualties on their side. By any measure, it was a textbook operation. Sarah had just begun the debriefing when Commander Rex Winters entered the secure room, his expression grim in a way that made her stomach clench. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, he said formally, though they had known each other for over a decade. I need to speak with you privately. In a sterile conference room minutes later, he delivered the news that shattered her world. Marcus is dead. Boating accident, they're saying. But there's more. Your daughter is in trouble. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell strode into the courtroom with the measured pace of someone accustomed to moving through danger. Her dress uniform was impeccable, the ribbons and medals on her chest telling a story of service that few civilians could fully comprehend. A thin scar traced along her right cheek, the only visible mark of her years in combat. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face. But it was her eyes that held the room captive, steel gray and focused entirely on her daughter and the metal restraints around her small wrists. Remove those. Now her voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the room, a command rather than a request. Gray looked uncertainly toward Judge Blackwell, who had gone pale, his earlier authority evaporating under the collective gaze of the naval officers. Before the judge could respond, Admiral Elena Carr stepped forward, her chest full of medals silencing any question of authority. That was not a request, officer. The bailiff fumbled with the handcuff key, his earlier confidence replaced with nervous efficiency. As he removed the restraints from Emma's wrists, Commander Winters approached the bench, placing a folder of classified documents before the judge. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell has been serving in classified operations for the past 3 years, Winters explained formally. Her communication with her family was necessarily limited due to the nature of her assignments. Upon notification of her husband's death, she was extracted from her assignment and granted emergency leave. Judge Blackwell swallowed visibly as he glanced at the documents, the official seals and security classifications far beyond his normal jurisdiction. The court was not made aware of these circumstances, he managed, his voice notably weaker than before. The Department of Defense apologizes for any miscommunication regarding Lieutenant Commander Mitchell's status. Admiral Carr addressed the court, her tone making it clear that the apology was a formality rather than an admission of wrongdoing. However, we do not apologize for the necessity of maintaining operational security. Sarah had not moved her gaze from her daughter. Now, with the handcuffs removed, she crossed the room in 4 precise steps and knelt before Emma. The courtroom fell completely silent, straining to hear this reunion between the SEAL and the child who had never stopped believing in her. Instead of the dramatic embrace Hollywood might have scripted, Sarah simply pressed her forehead gently against her daughter's, their family's private gesture of connection. She whispered words meant only for Emma. I told you I would always come back. Emma nodded once, her composure finally breaking as silent tears tracked down her cheeks. Dad said we should never doubt it. Something flickered across Sarah's face at the mention of her husband. Grief, anger, determination, before her expression settled back into controlled calm. She stood, keeping one hand on Emma's shoulder, and turned to face the court. Lieutenant Commander, Judge Blackwell began, attempting to regain control of his courtroom. While this is certainly an unexpected development, there are still legal matters regarding custody and property that must be addressed. Your Honor, Admiral Carr interrupted, I believe you should be made aware that Dr. Marcus Mitchell's death is currently under federal investigation. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the murmurs, Falcrest Development's sudden interest in the Mitchell property coincides with classified naval intelligence about foreign interest in monitoring U.S. naval operations. From that coastline, Sarah stood at parade rest, her bearing unmistakably military, but her hand remained gentle on her daughter's shoulder. My daughter told you the truth, she said, addressing not just the judge but the entire room. You chose not to believe her. The words hung in the air, an indictment of not just the court, but the entire community that had accepted the narrative of an abandoned wife and child without question. One of the SEALs stepped forward, whispering something to Sarah. She nodded once, then looked down at Emma. It's time to go home. As they turned to leave, Emma looked back at Lavinia, who gave her a small, proud nod. The SEALs escorted Sarah and Emma toward the exit, with the Admiral informing everyone present that certain aspects of today's proceedings were now classified. The townspeople who had been so eager to witness Emma's humiliation now averted their eyes as the truth of their misjudgment became impossible to ignore. Some battles are fought in darkness, far from cameras and headlines. Some heroes serve in silence, their sacrifices known only to those who understand the true cost of freedom. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell didn't come to prove anything. She wasn't there to be recognized or thanked or told she mattered. She already knew who she was. What mattered was that her daughter knew it too. Emma had told them the truth. She had never wavered, never doubted, even when the entire world told her she was wrong. Because she knew something the adults had forgotten. Real heroes don't abandon the people they love. They come home, no matter how long it takes, no matter who stands in their way. Now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Emma? Someone who stood alone, telling a truth that no one wanted to hear? Someone who refused to give up, even when the whole world told them they were wrong? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the times when children saw clearly what adults chose to ignore. Because at Hidden Heroes, we believe that truth doesn't depend on who believes it. It stands on its own, waiting for someone brave enough to speak it. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, share it, subscribe, and help us keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next one. And remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths.